welcome to Mr. Bob's Railroad Workbench. I'm Bob Lettenberger. Mr. Bob, Education Director at the National Railroad Museum. Welcome to the Workbench, where we talk about math, science, history, art, trains, and do it all with some very fun activities. You caught me just about ready to start on today's project. Hey, if you're watching us on Facebook Live and want to type in a question, we'll do so. We'll answer those right after the segment. If you would like to just type in and let us know where you're watching from and who you are, we'd love to hear from you. Also, make sure that you like the National Railroad Museum's Facebook page. Well, my project this morning was I was about to start coloring on a historic railroad poster. Well, not the actual historic poster, but a reproduction. And you know, that got me to thinking, boy, the railroads used a lot of art to promote themselves and also to send messages about their trains and their other services. And you know, today if we want to communicate a message, why, we take a photograph, we take a selfie, we do a video, and we can easily post it or have it processed and use it to communicate our message. But if we go back to, say, the late 1800s, even up into the 1940s, 1950s, taking and processing a photograph wasn't all that easy. And so the railroads produced a lot of artwork to communicate their message. Come on, let's take a look here. Railroads used artwork in their advertising. They wanted you to feel like you could be part of the scene. They wanted you to come take their train and know that it was going to be safe and comfortable and you were going to have a great time. But all of those images were actually paintings or illustrations that had to be created to communicate the message. So what kind of art did the railroads have and use? Well, Pullman put out a series of brochures talking about being the world's greatest housekeeper. One of the groups that the railroads especially wanted to appeal to were women. They wanted women to know the services they provided on their passenger trains were safe, they were clean, and very enjoyable. Well, and here you see it is wash day for Mr. Pullman, all those sheets and blankets and pillows being cared for before you take your next trip on a Pullman car. The illustration, something that would have to have been created specifically for that particular brochure. Another thing that folks wanted to know was, what is my Pullman accommodation going to look like? Well, taking a picture inside of a train, especially say in the 20s, 30s, 40s, was pretty difficult. So Pullman commissioned illustrations showing the daytime and nighttime configuration. Illustrations that had to be completed specifically for that particular publication. It wasn't only the railroads that used illustrations, but other businesses and businesses aligned with the railroads also used plenty of artwork early on. The Travelers Insurance Company had this illustration completed and then turned it into a promotional item. You're looking actually at the back of a little handheld mirror. Super C fast freight service and appears on the timetable, the schedules that those particular trains ran on, combined with a photograph of a contemporary train. You know, today around the country we have Operation Lifesaver that carries the message of safety around trains, to be safe at grade crossings, not to trespass, not to play on trains. But that same message back in, say, the 20s or 30s, again, had to be done with an illustration. And the illustration here quite graphically shows what can happen to young men and young ladies should they choose to play around trains and not stay safe. Again, illustrations being done for a specific purpose. Now, many times the railroads employed the services of well-known established artists. In this particular case, the Southern Pacific Railroad is working with Maynard Dixon, a well-known Western landscape painter. You see one of his works here. And Mr. Dixon was employed to create the poster art promoting some of the scenery that you would see along the Southern Pacific lines. The Union Pacific did a similar thing. They worked with a different artist, a gentleman named William Wilmarth. And Wilmarth for the Union Pacific not only produced art for their advertising, soliciting their passenger trains, but also did some retentive advertising during World War II, promoting the idea that the Union Pacific is keeping them rolling. Two different styles of illustration, but again, illustrations that had to be created specifically for the advertising. Well, that's a little look at railroad art and advertising and how the two came together. Now it's your turn to do some exploring. If you would like to, say, color some of those historic posters like the one I was working on, stop by our museum store. We have a wonderful coloring book, good for all ages, that features a number of those historic posters. If you'd also like to read a little bit more about railroad art and design, another book that you can find in our museum store, Railroad Identity, Design, and Culture. Either visit our museum store on the grounds of the National Railroad Museum or go to our website, nationalrrmuseum.org, click on the shopping tab, and you'll be able to find these too. Also, if you'd like to do a little coloring of your own, on our website, go to the Education tab, scroll down to the Activity Zone, find Mr. Bob's Railroad Workbench, and I've posted there a couple of historic coloring pages that you can create your own railroad posters. Railroad and the art. The railroads had a great deal of fantastic art created to help promote them throughout the years. The National Railroad Museum inspires lifelong learning by providing dynamic educational opportunities through the preservation of railroad objects and engaging exhibits and innovative programs. As a nonprofit educational institution, we are supported by both public and private contributions, and of course by those from our museum members. For more information on how you can support the National Railroad Museum or become a museum member, visit our website, nationalrrmuseum.org. Thank you so much for your continued support. Hey, I'm Mr. Bob. Thanks for visiting Mr. Bob's Railroad Workbench today, and we hope to see you here again real soon.